Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Meet the Author, this time of the book Rising Relentlessly. And you get a different host today because I, Ashley Elizabeth Packard, have the utmost honor to introduce you to Rachelle Bryant. And while you may have seen another podcast where she was the curator being interviewed, because she has done a phenomenal job of curating both Rooted to Rise and Rising Relentlessly. Rooted to Rise being one that went to a #1 bestseller, which is phenomenal. She also is an author in both of these books. Plus, she was an author of her own memoir, Expiration Date Unknown, which also hit #1. And she's been in other anthologies, called one in particular called We Choose Joy. And she just brings an absolute wealth of experience and heart and passion to every single thing that she does. And today we get to interview her as an author in Rising Relentlessly. Rachelle, welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
I don't think there's anything more to say about myself, so thank you. I'm Rachelle Bryant. I'm the curator and co-founder, I guess, of Wildly Free. And this has just been a chapter that keeps being written for me. And
Mm,
I'm just so excited to bring these other powerful voices and stories to everyone's attention, awareness, and somebody has to always create the invitation. So I'm quite honored that I got picked to be the invitation maker for this series and so much more. So
well, I love that. We are also excited to hear from you today. And I know that as the curator, there's a certain part of you that feels like showing up also as an author in these anthologies is an important space for you. And so you said yes from the beginning. But when you think about the content of your chapter, what is it that brought out that particular content for you? And why did you say yes to that story that you are telling in this chapter, in this book at this time?
I love that question. So really it aligned with writing the series as
Hmm.
a whole. I sat in a space, I actually didn't know what I was going to write until November. Since I didn't have to meet deadlines the way everybody else does, I just kind of sat with it. And it truly wasn't even influenced by any of the other voices. It was sitting in the space of trusting my gut. #1, to even start using any kind of cannabis, particularly CBD and CBDA and all of the other wonderful cannabinoids, but trusting my gut to even write these books in the first place. And so I think the title came first. I
Hmm.
knew I needed to talk about the gut brain connection. And then it just naturally flowed on how it has affected, impacted my life on
Hmm.
so many different levels with so many different people in my life. And then it kind of became an homage to my mom and her struggles, and kind of that journey we had together, and what ultimately I believe may have been a huge factor in her life, taking her life. She had a lot of battles and stuff like that. And though I don't really know how she passed away in her sleep, thank you, God. I still think that it had something to do with, just her body saying enough. And so I really wanted to honor her in all of this as well because she was the one that raised me to have a love of books, along with my grandfather. And they never went anywhere without a book. And they were very fast readers, and they just kind of gave me the passion to read and write. And so I thought it was appropriate to share a little bit of her story in this. So that was kind of my driving force, and I just let the the fingers go to the keyboard.
Well, I love that. And something that I've heard you talk about often is how important it is that you feel in this wildly free space that we occupy to be somebody who goes first. Right, and you did that in writing your memoir. You did that in issuing the invitation for Rooted to Rise. But I feel like you also continue to do that as you show up in these chapters that you write, because one of the things that we want authors to do is to step into the real and the raw and the difficult, right? And the beautiful all simultaneously. And in this chapter in particular, you kind of have this dance that you do between really good information and just these really raw, exposed moments. And so knowing that people look to you in terms of like, how do you step into these spaces? How do you hold that inside of you when you know that you're going to be educating on one level and also just pouring out these pieces of your heart onto the page on another level?
I think one of the things I come forward with that not a lot of people do is just the fact that, I'm teetering between this like, how much time do I have left? What kind of
Mm,
impact do I want to make? And this whole, but I can't keep living in the waiting to die space.
mm,
And I would say that, through this chapter, having really nothing to do with the content per se, I had to release a lot of things starting around October. And I think that that's what allowed me to flow my chapter so well in November. I carry so much history, lived experiences, and one of those is having a transplant and what I wrote the first book of my memoir about. And I just continue to sit in the stagnant spaces of expiration date unknown. When am I going to die? I need to do this. I need to give this to my family. I need to give this to other people. I need to all these things. And I was really coming from so much of it from a trauma response. And I think what the pivotal moment for me with this book was letting go. And I've always, it's very hard for people to believe that until I was age 37, which was another pivotal moment in my life, I didn't cry. I didn't talk about myself. I didn't share anything. I just wanted to be a light and love other people. And with that, I never put myself first. And I think that telling our stories is honoring so many parts of ourself. And so, whether I do it through a book, whether I do it through social, I just want to create invitations for people to know that, as terrifying as this may sound, life is just going to keep happening. It's going to happen for us, it's going to happen to us. Right now, there's a whole lot of life being thrown both of our ways through this whole process. And what does it mean to share your story in all of it? And it means that, if I'm able to share the things that most people are nervous about sharing,
mhm,
and I really feel like a lot of times that's what brings people to feel safe.
mm,
I'm not airing out my laundry with these
mm-mm,
books. I have always been, I always lead with education. I feel like knowledge is power, and I feel like there's always a mix. And you'll see parts of me that some of you may not even know about being science brained. But science has always been my leading passion.
mhm,
Um, and I think that it's important to know that you have nothing to lose, only to gain, even if you do start losing a little bit of, what you lose is fear. What you
mhm,
lose are the things that were never meant for you to have. And I don't think that there's really anything in this world more cathartic than writing, whether you share it with someone or you share it for yourself, because all of us are doing this for ourselves as well as
mhm.
others. But you'll hear through the podcast and all of their interviews and everything with these people is that they didn't expect to gain what they gained within themselves.
I think that's really beautiful. And as somebody who is the curator and you get to sit in all these spaces, you get to watch these journeys of these authors start to finish. You get to see them step in and say yes. You get to see them grapple with writing their chapters. You get to see them step into the editing process. You get to see them show up on the podcast. You get to see them and how it feels when they see their name and, likeness on a graphic that, our amazing designer has created. You get to see all of that. But what is it like to live that as an author? Because you also get the opportunity, like you get to work with James and I as editors, you get to work with Amy as a designer. So what is it like to not necessarily be front of the house in that space? What is it like to be an author in that space?
I don't know. I don't know if I've processed. I think I am so in it to be with others
Mm-hmm.
that I first and foremost have the most amazing organically developed team that it was just going to be me and my husband. That was it. And then it was our wonderful designer, Amy, and our wonderful, you and our wonderful web designer, Nina. And I don't think I've ever stopped to think about myself as an author.
Mm-hmm.
Even with my memoir, I was doing it with you guys. So it feels like so much of an us in
Mm.
everything from heart to page all the way to now Rising Relentless. I don't think I've thought of myself as an individual in any of this. So there's an opportunity for me to sit with that for a while and maybe it'll come out in the next interview, but I don't think I've sat with that yet. So
Well, that's that's really cool. I think that, there's, I don't know, something special about how Wildly Free tends to hold its authors and nurture them throughout the process. And so I just think that it's really cool on our end to get to walk some of that, you know, walk some of that right along with everybody. So I think that's great. So when you talk about doing this all together, right, there are a lot of people out there who either are saying no because it feels really hard, like saying no to their voice, or they feel like maybe they needed to write something solo instead of being in a place that's more collaborative. How has all that collaboration, how has all that connectedness, how has that shaped you, shaped this experience? What is it like to not do it alone?
I don't think we're meant to do life alone on any level.
Hmm.
That's a hard lesson to continually try to learn in terms of like stepping in the trust of other
Mm,
people and knowing that there's no such thing as perfection in the process or the journey. And so both of us, or collectively as a group, we're going to come into it messy together and that we're
mm,
just going to figure it out. And it may result in more messes, but that clearly we're not meant to do life alone. And so I can't even imagine that person that's listening to this or opening the book and saying, oh, I want to do it, but I want to hide for a while.
mm,
I talk to people weekly where they're like, yeah, I've been writing a book, but then I got stuck on chapter or whatever they define it.
mm-hmm.
And I always ask them the question, well, what made you stop? And a lot of times the response has something to do with, I didn't have anybody to share it with. I don't
Mm,
know who to share it with. And you're the very first person I've ever shared that I've started doing this.
mm-hmm.
And that responsibility alone is one of the greatest gifts that they just started having the conversation. No pressure to publish, no pressure to even walk the journey, but if I could be that first person that they go, hey, I've been writing a book, whether it's one page or 1,000 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and just that they have that opportunity that I think when I started this, I had just finished an anthology with 21 other women and I got the bug. I got a taste of what it could be.
Mm,
And that experience had many ups and many downs. And I just knew I wanted to build more of the community aspect of it.
mm,
And that I wanted to even support like the curators moving forward. Curator support is so important.
mm,
And it's our role to know what they need just as much as other individuals in the book. And so I can't imagine creating a space without shared hearts,
mm,
pulling together something that was waiting for the right invitation to bring it forward, to keep it safe in the process, and
mm,
keep it the bright light that it is through the publishing and putting it out into the world. And I think that we need to get back to our community roots. And I know so much of us have been through so much over the last couple of years. And I think that this isn't just about book writing, it's about
Mm,
redefining safety and healing from a lot of traumas through community.
definitely. Well, and when I think back to just spending time with your chapter, both as an editor and just as your friend, being able to take a lot away from that, there, so much of that shines through in what you wrote also. But what do you hope that people take away from your chapter in particular? I know that we've had another podcast. I hope everybody listens to your podcast about being a curator. And I know that we'll link that below so that everybody can catch all the things. But what what do you specifically hope that somebody gets out of your chapter in this book?
Tell your story,
Mm.
whether it's through an anthology, a book, bits and pieces that you share on a Monday night writing hour that we have, whether it's on a sticky note because a part of you's bursting, whether it's picking up your phone and typing it while you're sitting on the toilet,
Mm-hmm.
or waiting the, pickup line at school, or you just went grocery shopping and you just had this moment. Just tell your story. It's in our DNA to tell our stories. That's how we have communicated from the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many influences that tell us that we're not enough and our story's not enough, and that our lived experiences are too hard for people to read or hear, or, so many times we don't share out of protecting others. And we're doing the opposite. And I don't know where that narrative was written, and I don't know how it was written, but I'm here to encourage people to rewrite even the stories we tell ourselves when they're not developed from truth, but they're developed from trauma or other people's traumas that they imposed onto us, or, whatever it is. But my chapter talks about a lot of things that people don't know because I just found out myself a couple of weeks ago, and that you don't have to have it all figured out. And
Mm,
there's no beginning and ending. I encourage people a lot of times to start messy in the middle and kind of maybe put a little bit of context and then maybe words of encouragement at the end, but like start it messy and don't have it all figured out.
mm,
And when I write future books, it'll have parts of my now that
mm.
are going to be in the past that I'll be able to write about in the future, but really just tell your story no matter what, even if it's just picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, can I share something with you?" And it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just do it. Like just tell your story.
Which I love. And when I hope that people are really hearing everything that you're saying there and experiencing that invitation to step into these spaces. And so when somebody does say yes, if they decide, yes, I'm gonna choose my brave, I'm gonna choose yes to me, I'm going to choose yes to my voice. I'm going to choose yes to the story that's burning inside of me. And they come and they decide that they're going to work with Wildly Free. What would you say to somebody who's like, is this the right space for me to say that yes? Because I hear you saying, say yes, period, hard stop. And I know that's where we all stand, whether you choose to work with us or not. But again, you've walked through this 3 times as an author with Wildly Free, right? And then you continue to step into those spaces with anybody who comes here to say yes. And so if they're trying to figure out, is Free the place for my yes? What would you tell them having been an author in this space?
I think the number one thing I want people to understand about this space is that you need to have the capacity to be loved.
Mm,
Because it's hard.
hmm
but you have 5 people that are like, they already know when you're going to come into this space. There's a lot of lived experiences between the 5 of us.
Hmm.
So there's nothing you can share with us that will change how we perceive or feel about you or accept you. I just want everyone to feel like they're safe because
Hmm.
so much of what has been rooted in Wildly Free are the opinions of others, negative talk, voices silenced, people being told that they're not enough, all of these things. And I think that what I enjoy most in this whole process is watching people relax their body language.
Hmm.
In our gatherings, I can see the progression. We meet like once a month with most of these projects, and it's like, hi. And you can like, cameras are turned off, which we encourage, just show up authentically you. By like the last one before they turn in their chapters, everyone's cameras on.
Mm.
Everybody is like, everyone has a drink, like a cup of tea or something, and they're just, and they don't have to be afraid anymore because
Hmm.
you're going to step into it scared. We're not expecting you to whatever, but just be
Hmm.
ready to be loved on and have your stories be seen. Uh, you and James, the way that you see us as authors, the questions you ask, you are so invested
Mm.
emotionally in these chapters, in these words, that I think that that's really where so many of these authors in these podcasts have been saying, like, they saw me before I even saw myself. They
Mm.
loved on me before I could love on myself. And from start to finish, from the touch base with me to the experience they get with you to being seen through the design of the book, I mean, they felt seen with that. And then getting their advanced reader copies and sitting in the stories of everyone else because we don't let them read them. There's no shared anything until that. And then that first morning, waking up to messages over and over and over and over again. Oh, I just read yours. Oh my gosh, da da da. Like they're sharing it with each other first. They're loving on each other first. There's just so much. I could like talk for hours about this. So why wildly free and what should you be prepared for
Mm.
is that we're not looking at your words for profit. We're
Mm.
looking at your words for a personal journey
Hmm.
with us because it starts with you telling your story first, and then it's our responsibility and our honor to get it out into the world in a way that touches people's hearts and gives them permission to do it after you do it. And that's how we
Hmm.
got all of these authors. If it hadn't been for the courageous authors of Rooted to Rise, every single person in Rising Relentlessly said, because of one of the authors in Rooted to Rise, I said yes. And we are creating a movement, not just a company.
Hmm.
Because when you get into the wildly free space, your life has changed forever, just as our
Mm.
lives have been changed forever because of all of your stories.
Mm. I don't know that it can be said any more beautiful than that. I don't know that it can be. And so my hope is that for everybody who has listened to how powerful you are, stepping into your yes, stepping into it over and over and over again, I hope that they choose to pick up this book and that they decide that they're going to go and read your chapter and read the chapters of everybody else that was courageous and that decided to choose, I don't know, vulnerability, decided to choose themselves and all of this because, like you said, it's a movement. It's a movement. And I think that what so many people in like get in their way when it comes to sharing their words is they either think that they're not enough or as much as this is a business, they get in their way because they're trying to figure out the business end of things. And when you work with Wildly Free and when you step in, whether you are a co-founder or somebody who's curating an anthology or somebody who's writing their chapter, of which you are all three. No matter what space you're in, it's about the power and the impact that comes from it. And there is absolutely no way to ever quantify what comes out of this space. We just know that we're forever changed. So, thank you to everybody who has taken the time to watch this podcast. We hope that you will go and see the podcasts of all the other authors. If you have been resonating with things that Rachelle has been talking about, don't wait. Reach out. The best way to reach out to her is by contacting Wildly Free, but I would also encourage you to follow her on social media, show up in spaces with her because the authentic, genuine, just everything in this podcast is exactly what you're going to experience, no matter what space you step into with her. So, all of that information will be down below. We know that there are other podcasts where you are going to jump on and you're going to want to meet the other authors in this incredible Rising Relentlessly book. You can even go back and look at all of the podcasts from the Rooted to Rise book. Everything is here. But we invite you into space with us, and we thank you so much for being here while we got a chance to interview Rachelle Bryant, author and curator of Rising Relentlessly. And we'll see you guys the next time.
Thank you.